Picture this. You're out in the bright spring sun, eagerly sprinkling flower seeds in your garden, only to wait weeks and realize they're never going to grow. Well, if you're trying to grow the classic cottage flower, the forget-me-not, or as it's known in Bulgarian, nezabravki, you might be making a huge mistake. Because you actually have to plunge these specific seeds into total darkness to get them to sprout. Let's dive right into this comprehensive explainer and uncover the fascinating botanical science behind growing this vibrant, starry-eyed flower successfully. We're going to explore everything from its rather poetic history to the exact, down-to-the-ounce soil chemistry it craves. If you've ever struggled to get these little beauties to bloom, or if you're just looking for that perfect, low-maintenance splash of early spring color, you are in the exact right place.
Right off the bat, we run into this massive paradox that trips up so many beginner gardeners. See, while these gorgeous blue flowers absolutely love bright early spring gardens once they're grown, their seeds are what botanists call negative photoblastic. All that means is they literally demand total darkness to break dormancy and germinate. So if you just scatter them on the soil surface in the bright sun like you'd naturally do with most wildflower seeds, they simply will not grow.
Okay, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with understanding forget-me-nots, then move into preparing to plant, followed by the planting process, care and maintenance, troubleshooting common mistakes, and we'll wrap it up with conclusion and next steps.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Understanding Forget-Me-Nots, where botanical science meets romantic lore.
Before we get our hands dirty with soil science, we have to talk about the legend. This famous cry, German for forget-me-not, supposedly came from a 15th century knight who was casually strolling along the Danube River. The story goes that as he leaned over the water to pick these delicate blue flowers for his lady, while wearing full, incredibly heavy armor, which was probably his first big mistake, he fell right in. Swept away by the strong current, he supposedly tossed the bouquet to his beloved, shouting "Vergiss my nicht," thereby sealing its legacy forever as this universal symbol of true love, remembrance, and fidelity.
Botanically speaking, however, the plant's actual name is just a bit less romantic. It belongs to the Boraginaceae family and is known as Myosotis. Now that's derived from the Greek words for mouse and ear, and honestly, it makes total sense. When you look really closely at the plant's delicate, fuzzy, rounded foliage before the actual flowers emerge, it perfectly describes those tiny, soft, mouse ear-shaped leaves.
This brings us to a super crucial point, identifying your species so you can avoid an absolute garden disaster. Assuming all forget-me-nots are exactly the same is a total recipe for failure. What you want to look for is Myosotis sylvatica. That's the well-behaved woodland variety that forms nice, tidy mounds. On the flip side, you want to strictly avoid Myosotis scorpioides, unless of course you have a fully contained pond. That one is a water species that spreads aggressively via underground rhizomes, and it can become highly invasive, literally choking out your native plants. So rule number 1, always check the Latin name on your seed packet.
Moving right along to Section 2, Preparing to Plant, specifically selecting the perfect location and soil.
Forget-me-nots are a little picky about their beds. They demand well-aerated, humus-rich soil, definitely not heavy clay or pure sand. You're aiming for a loamy mix that holds onto moisture but still drains perfectly. A great recipe is 2 parts leaf mold or compost. That gives them the rich nutrients and moisture retention they crave. Add 1 part horticultural sand or perlite, which prevents root rot by guaranteeing good drainage. And here's a neat expert trick. Tossing in a half part of crushed oyster shell lightly buffers the soil pH toward neutral, providing necessary calcium without shocking their delicate root systems.
As for location, forget-me-nots absolutely thrive in partial shade, particularly in spots that get gentle morning sun and cooler afternoon shade. When you're picking your spot, think about planting them alongside some companion plants. Their low-growing, vivid blue blooms create this phenomenal, layered spring display when you tuck them underneath taller bulbs like tulips or nestle them right up against hostas and bleeding hearts. Plus, their open, flat flowers are incredibly accessible for early emerging native bees, which makes them a fantastic, eco-friendly pollinator anchor for your whole yard.
All right, Section 3, the planting process. Let's cover the step-by-step techniques for perfect germination.
I cannot stress this enough. Timing is everything with these seeds. Forget-me-nots are strictly cool season growers. You have to wait until your optimal soil temperature hits a very precise window, between 60 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit, for them to successfully germinate. If you get impatient and sow too early in cold, wet soil below 50 degrees, the seeds will just rot.
But if you sow too late, when the soil has warmed up above 75 degrees, the seedlings get super stressed and become prime targets for damping off disease.
So, how do we actually do this? First, moisten that loamy soil mix we talked about. Then, sow the seeds very thinly. We're talking just 1/8 of an inch deep or even right on the surface. Now, here's the magic trick. To accommodate that negative photoblastic nature we discussed earlier, cover that whole seeded area with a plain piece of cardboard or a blackout dome. This plunges them into the total darkness they need. Check under there daily, and after a few days, once they've sprouted, immediately take the cardboard off so they can soak up the light they need to grow. Finally, just thin the seedlings out so they're about 6 to 8 inches apart. That guarantees they'll get proper airflow.
On to Section 4, Care and Maintenance, or how to nurture those blooms for years to come. Forget-me-nots have this really unique, cool season, often biennial life cycle. If you direct sow the seeds in late summer or early fall, the seedlings will use that time to firmly establish their roots, and then they'll actually overwinter as these tough, small leaf rosettes. Then, when the cool, damp weather of spring finally arrives, usually from April to June, they will just explode into a massive cloud of vivid blue blooms.
Listen, overwatering and overfertilizing, those are the absolute fastest ways to kill off these plants. You must water them deeply right at the base of the plant. Never water them from overhead because wet foliage is basically a VIP invitation for gray mold. Let the topsoil dry out just slightly between waterings. They like consistent moisture, but they hate having soggy feet. As for feeding, you really only need to fertilize once, right at planting time, using a balanced 3-4-4 organic mix. Please don't use high nitrogen fertilizers, otherwise you'll end up with a massive bush of green leaves and absolutely zero flowers. Finally, deadhead those fading flowers weekly. It extends their blooming season and stops the plant from aggressively self-seeding all over the place.
Section 5, Troubleshooting Common Mistakes. Let's talk pests, diseases, and environmental disorders.
Even with the best care, things can go wrong. If you start noticing your nice green leaves getting covered in this weird, white, dusty film, you're dealing with powdery mildew. Now, diseases in forget-me-nots are almost always environmental, not some crazy pathogen. Powdery mildew specifically is caused by stagnant air, high humidity, and overhead watering. But you can easily fix and prevent this just by thinning the plants out to at least 8 inches apart to get that airflow moving and remembering to strictly water at the soil level.
And when it comes to bugs, please skip the toxic sprays entirely. Slugs and snails absolutely love munching on those tender new leaf rosettes. You'll know it's them if you see irregular holes and those telltale silvery slime trails. You can protect your young plants by setting out shallow saucers filled with a little bit of beer to safely trap them, or use a pet-safe iron phosphate bait. Also, if you see aphids clustering up on the new flower shoots, don't panic. A quick, sharp blast of water from your garden hose will easily knock them off. Better yet, plant companions like yarrow to encourage natural predators, like ladybug larvae, to move in and do all the pest control work for you.
Finally, Section 6, Conclusion and Next Steps, wrapping up our explainer.
Let's do a quick recap of the absolute essentials you need to remember. 1. You must block out all the light with cardboard to sprout those negative photoblastic seeds. 2. Always check the Latin name to ensure you're buying the safe woodland variety, Meiosis ciliavotica. 3. Give them a rich, loamy soil that drains well. 4. Control the moisture by base watering only, which keeps them totally fungus-free. And 5. Deadhead those spent blooms so they flower beautifully without taking over your entire garden.
Just a quick heads up before you grab your trowel and start digging. Plant behavior can vary wildly depending on your specific microclimate, so always consult your local gardening experts or agricultural extension services. You want to ensure you're planting responsibly and that forget-me-nots are a safe, non-invasive choice for your unique local ecosystem.
Well, armed with the strict science of the soil and a legendary romance of a 15th century knight, you've got everything you need to succeed. So it's time to ask yourself, what legacy of beauty are you going to plant in your garden this season? Get out there, get your hands dirty, and happy planting.